The 100 Years' War, a century of fire and steel. For more than a century, two great kingdoms battled for power, for honor, and for survival. England and France, two nations bound by blood, yet divided by ambition, clashed in a war that would forever reshape the medieval world. From the thunder of English longbows to the fire of French cannons. From the triumph of kings to the visions of a peasant girl, the 100 Years' War was not one war, but a series of wars. It was the story of crowns, but also the story of nations being born. This is the tale of the 100 Years' War, the war that ended the Middle Ages. The year is 1337. King Charles IV of France dies without a son. According to French custom, the crown should pass to the closest male relative, but there is a problem. England's king, Edward III, is the grandson of a French king, and by blood he claims the throne of France. Yet the French nobility refuse him. They invoke the Salic law, an ancient Frankish rule that forbids inheritance through the female line. Instead, they crown Philip VI of Valois, cousin of the late king. To Edward, this is more than an insult. It is a theft. In 1337, he declares himself the rightful king of France. What begins as a dynastic quarrel will ignite into one of the longest and most destructive conflicts in European history. The 100 Years' War, Part 1, 1337 to 1360. The first battles prove shocking. The traditional order of medieval warfare was knights in shining armor charging on horseback. But at the Battle of in 1346, Edward III's army met the French and the French knights charged again and again. But the English had a secret weapon, the longbow, 6 feet tall, drawn by the strength of a man's whole body. It pierced armor like a spear and cut down knights before they could even reach the field. Wave after wave of French cavalry fell beneath the rain of arrows. The flower of French chivalry lies broken in the mud. At the Battle of Poitiers in 1356, the English struck again and this time captured the King of France, John II, taking him prisoner back to England. Never before had France been so humiliated. In 1360, the Treaty of was signed. England gained vast territories in France, including Aquitaine. For a moment, it seemed the English might truly conquer France. But this war was far from over. As the 100 Years' War rages, something even worse sweeps across Europe. It's the Black Death. Carried by fleas on rats, the plague kills millions. Entire villages vanish. Armies shrink not from battle, but from disease. France and England alike lose nearly half their population. For a moment, war slows. But even in the shadow of death, kings and nobles do not forget their claims. French Recovery, 1369 to 1389. In the second phase of the war, fortune shifts. Under the leadership of King Charles V of France and his brilliant general, Bertrand du Guesclin, France begins to recover. Du Guesclin avoids great battles. Instead, he uses guerrilla tactics to harass the English. Slowly but surely, French fortresses are retaken. By the 1380s, most of the land lost at Brittany has been restored. Meanwhile, England weakens. Edward III grows old. His son, the Black Prince, dies young, and the crown passes to the troubled reign of Richard II. The war pauses, but the peace is uneasy. By the early 1400s, England was under new rule. King Henry V, a determined and ruthless king who revived the claim to the French crown and invaded. In 1415, at the Battle of Agincourt, the English faced overwhelming odds. The French outnumbered them 3-1, but the muddy fields of northern France would become a graveyard for knights as the longbowmen once again decided the battle. French charges bogged down in the mud as arrows rained from above. Thousands of knights were cut down, many suffocating in their own armor. Agincourt became a legend, a symbol of English triumph against impossible odds. Henry pressed his advantage, forcing France's own king, Charles VI, to declare him heir to the French throne in the Treaty of Troyes in 1420. To many, it seemed France was finished. But history was about to change course because of a teenage peasant girl, Joan of Arc, the story of a peasant girl who became a military leader and saved an entire nation. Her name was Joan of Arc. She was born in the small village of Anne. She claimed that she heard the voices of the saints calling her to save France from the English at just 17 years old. She convinced the Dauphin Charles, the disinherited son of the Mad King, to give her command of his troops. And in 1429, Joan leads French troops to lift the siege of Orleans. Against all odds, her courage and faith inspire soldiers weary of defeat. The English are driven back, and for the first time in decades, France has hope. That same year, Joan escorts Charles to Reims, where he is crowned as Charles VII, rightful King of France. But Joan's triumph is short-lived. In 1430, she is captured by Burgundian allies of the English and accused of heresy. She is put on trial, and in 1431, at the age of 19, she is burned at the stake in Rouen. Her death shocks the world, but far from destroying French resistance. It transforms Joan into a martyr and a symbol. The French spirit, once broken, now burns brighter than ever. The French Resurgence, 1431 to 1453. After Joan's sacrifice, France rallies under Charles VII. He reforms the army, creating the first standing royal army in French history. No longer would France rely on feudal lords or mercenaries. At the same time, a new weapon changes everything. Gunpowder artillery, now cannons can tear down the walls of castles that once seemed impregnable. The age of the knight is ending, and the age of modern warfare is beginning. One by one, the English strongholds fell. Finally, in 1453, at the Battle of Castellon, French cannons crushed the last English army in France. The English commander, John Talbot, is killed in the field. With Castellon, the 100 Years' War comes to an end. After Joan's sacrifice, France rallies under Charles VII. He completely reforms the army, creating the first standing royal army in French history. No longer would France rely on feudal lords or mercenaries. At the same time, a new weapon changes everything. Gunpowder, artillery, now cannons, can tear down the walls of castles that once seemed impregnable. The age of the knight is ending and the age of modern warfare is beginning. One by one, the English strongholds fall. Finally, in 1453, at the Battle of Castellon, French cannons crush the last English army in France. The English commander, John Talbot, is killed in the field, and with that, the 100 Years' War comes to an end. The 100 Years' War is over. France has won, but at what cost? For 116 years, the war has raged. Generations have lived and died under its shadow. But now France is more united than ever. The monarchy is stronger than before, laying the foundation for the powerful French nation-state. For England, the war is a disaster. The dream of a continental empire is destroyed, and in the end, the kingdom collapses into its own civil war. The Wars of the Roses. But beyond crowns and kings, the 100 Years' War marks the end of an age. The supremacy of the armored knight is gone, replaced by longbows, pikes, and cannons. The medieval world of castles and chivalry gives way to the modern world of nation-states and professional armies. And at the heart of it all stands a young woman, Joan of Arc, whose courage turned the tide of history and whose name would echo for centuries. The 100 Years' War was more than a dynastic struggle. It was the crucible in which France became France and England turned inward towards its own destiny. It was the clash of kings, the fall of knights, and the rise of nations. And though it ended in fire at Castellon, its legacy lived on in the stories of Crécy and Agincourt, in the memory of Joan of Arc, and in the birth of the modern world. This was not just 100 years of war. This was the war that closed the chapter on the Middle Ages.